Welcome to The Holistic Nurse with your host, Peggy Smith. Peggy will introduce and educate her viewers about the differences between alternative, holistic, and complementary medical therapies. Her goal is to empower the lay medical consumer to learn how to advocate for themselves. So now, please welcome the host of The Holistic Nurse, Peggy Smith.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this week's Holistic Nurse with Peggy Smith. Today, we're going to be bringing back one of our favorite guests, the BushWhisperer from South Africa. And we're going to be talking about the doors of perception. So, Franklin, would you like to join us and say hello? For people that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you come from. How are the penguins doing?
Hello, namaste. Yeah, I'm a shaman located here on the southern tip of Africa, Cape Town, by the penguin sanctuary. Actually, funnily enough, the penguins are doing better than they were doing. I must admit, the numbers are slowly starting to increase in the nursery. They've had a serious problem with penguins not propagating, not numerating themselves. But yeah, it's winter here. It's starting to get a little bit fresh from time to time. The weather's up and down. I'm a shaman. I live and work here. A lot of my clientele is like around the world. Sometimes I do face-to-face work. Sometimes I do work in people's homes. And I do podcasts as the BushWhisperer. And there, my name is there. You can see it. And yeah, I was trained in various different disciplines of psychic and spiritual development from various different schools. Went on an incredible journey for a couple of decades, most of that in Far East, most of that in India, where I trained in various places and lived in the jungles. Lived in the jungles barefoot, actually. Lived in the Himalayas as well. Beautiful. So yeah, I've had a full life, and it's an honor to be here with you, dear Peggy. You look well, by the way. You look like you're
Thank
glowing.
you. And, it's always a pleasure. I do follow you on your other sites, but I don't always feel, I guess, confident enough to contribute to some of but I'm learning a lot of things on your shows. So today we're going to be talking about the doors of perception. Explain what that title means.
Well, we think of reality as being outside of us. We think of reality as being the physical world around us, which it is. However, what we're experiencing is a very personalized scope of reality. And a lot of that has got to do with our awareness and our perception. No two people see the same world, right? You could see one person and they would look at how untidy nature is, how
Well,
everything's
I
just
have a
like
couple good
disorganized.
friends. Have a couple good friends. They're both in their 80s, 84 and 80 respectively, and they're brother and sister, but now as they're reflecting on their life and they're realizing they had the same parents, they lived in the same house, but their memories are entirely different. Uh,
Yeah, exactly. So much of what we choose to perceive and choose to experience is personal. And we know that anthropomorphization, we tend to anthropomorphize everything, which means that we project our own idiosyncrasies onto everything that we view. Like this mouse, for example, has got a character because I've projected my character onto that mouse. And it's if somebody else uses that mouse, it'll have a different character. And so this sort of relates to a couple of different concepts that the ancient and indigenous cultures used to have, like animism, right? And animism, like basically, is that all things have a soul and that there is a spiritual component and a mental component to everything, right? Um, Within the physical world. And this is also quite closely aligned to panpsychism, which means that there is a thought object related to every object, and that there is consciousness latent within everything. For example, the atoms of this desk before me, they have got their own consciousness because they have to maintain gravity, they have to maintain pressure. When I push my hand against the desk, they have to know how hard to push back against my hand, right? So there's a kind of an intelligence inherent in everything around us. And so this asks us to beg the question, you know, what is this nature of physical reality, and how much of this experience is in our minds? And even of the experience in our minds, I mean, we know through neuropsychology that reality is the same as a dream in terms of the neurochemistry, right? It's the parietal lobes that are basically shaping an experience based upon the senses that are fed through the system, and this goes straight through into the parietal lobes, and it creates this experience of texture, of physical, tangible reality, when actually it's just all electromagnetic fields vibrating at different harmonies and different pitch, different resonance, is what science tells us. So all of the sculpting of reality is done in our minds, essentially. It's part of our brain, it's part of the neurostructure. And, we can also take this one step further. We can look at physics. And physics is probably a good place to break down what reality is, because we've got hormones that we experience that are our emotional states. We've got electrical impulses that run through cables and bounce between synapses carried on little axons, and a highly developed system of electrical impulses running through that carries information in much the same way that this computer in front of me does. In fact, it's not that different. The way the central nervous system operates and the way the computer operates, the only difference is what's driving the central nervous system is largely metabolism and hormones. And the hormones are vibrating at a faster pitch, right? And the hormones are being driven around the system, and the electrical frequencies in the nervous system are regulated by the hormones, and then they cross-regulate the hormones in return. It's like a seesaw effect. What you do to the one side happens to the other. And then you've got DNA, right? And the DNA is telling the cells what to do, which hormones, which enzymes are necessary, what the microbes need to be doing, because the cells are interacting with the microbes, and the microbes are producing their own ecosystem. And so within this ecosystem, the hormones are being built up. So the DNA has a direct effect on the hormones, and the hormones has a direct effect upon the neurology, the electromagnetic system of our nervous system. And that system then feeds back into our hormonal system, and the hormonal system feeds back into our DNA system. And this is what epigenetics is, right? Epigenetics, genes being turned on and off. A lot of it's got to do, we can change our genetic footprint to some degree by the thoughts that we think, right? And by the feelings that we allow ourselves to become in tune by, so we can affect our feelings by the colors around us. So the very nature of reality is through these senses, can be greatly influenced and changed by the hormonal states, which is our emotions and our feelings, and our neurology, which is our thoughts and our logic and our ability to comprehend the feelings and the emotions that we're experiencing. And when we take this to the next step, we look at DNA. And so DNA has such a little feature called quantum tunneling. It's very interesting. You should go look it up. And quantum tunneling is an effect that happens part and parcel with the DNA. Now, if you look at like the latest quantum mechanics and quantum fields, what the scientists are discovering is they speak about superposition. And superposition, I'll try and simplify it, is basically that all objects can exist within 2 points, in 2 places at once, right? And Schrodinger's cat had a lot to say about this, as did Niels Bohr. And they had different perspectives, but the perspectives were united by the idea of superposition. Now, superposition is affected by quantum tunneling. That's something to think about. Why did the ancients believe in magic? Why did they believe they could do a rain dance, right, and change the weather? Why did they believe they could do a ritual or some kind of a magic or a spell and affect reality? Well, DNA is literally quantum tunneling, and quantum tunneling can actually affect superposition. If you go and take a look at the research, superposition can collapse as a result of quantum tunneling. And superposition means that there's more than one possible reality that collapses due to quantum tunneling, which means it's forcing reality to choose A or B. And so I think we have a direct interface with matter, with reality, and that the science is starting to get to reveal this, though the scientists that are interpreting the data are very biased in the way that they interpret the data, but the data's there for people with an open mind to interpret it. So there seems to be a lot of like new frontiers being broken at the moment. And this brings us right back full circle to the doors of perception. What is the nature of reality, and how much of it is being affected by my perception, right? How much of reality is a product of the imagination, and is
I guess
all
I'm
of reality?
thinking of a couple things here that is, my mind has seen several different examples. When you spoke of DNA, here in my locale, we had a child last year, less than a year old, born with a fatal liver condition, and the scientists went in and modified his DNA and basically fixed the problem. He now looks forward to a pretty wholesome life, um, and that's all science and all, but where are you sticking the human aspect here? I mean, are we, like, you know what, I'm not asking you to read my mind, but it's, actually, we're gonna take a brief break, and then maybe that's where we can pick up because that's what's blowing my mind right now. Okay.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
Hi, welcome back. The Bush Whisperer and I were discussing the doors of perception and how we affect our own realities, and I guess what are the implications of that?
Yeah, and you mentioned a really excellent example about how the DNA of a child was changed and that child's physical conditions changed. And the DNA changing affects our state of mind as well. And a state of mind changing affects the hormones, which then give messages to the DNA, which trigger on and off switches for the genes, which we call epigenetics, or one element of epigenetics. So, like, we've got quite a lot of control over our epigenetics, even though we don't realize it. This is why myself, as an example, right? I haven't been to a doctor. I went to a doctor once when I thought I'd fractured my finger in an injury, because I had to go to a doctor to get an X-ray. But previously, the last time I actually went to a doctor, it's more than 2 decades ago, right? So I've been to doctors like in my life 4 times, but I'm an optimist, right? I'm an overwhelming optimist. If I get ill, I'm like, oh, I'm going to be fine, and then I am fine. So I think so much of our healing energy is related to our emotion and our hormonal states. And another thing we were talking about when the break was off You were wondering how microbes tie into this and how electricity is important. And this is very interesting because within the cell there is an electrical potential. And when that electrical potential drops, we become weak. When that electrical potential drops to a certain level, our immunities become affected. Because think of what a white blood cell is. It needs to act like a little miniature organic magnet, right? And it needs to find foreign bodies and it needs to attract towards it. That's a magnetic electrical kind of biological effect happening there. The same way as if I take a tourmaline and I heat up a tourmaline, I can pick up ash out of a fire with it, right? It's got to do with electrical potential and energy being shaped. So
Well, just this
the
past week, I had an issue in our heat wave where the battery of my car had apparently had exploded the acid out of it because of the heat. And I had some warning signs the car was losing power until it didn't start. And I'd never even heard of my battery just shooting out acid because of, that chemical reaction, I guess, combined with the thermal. Um, but it's all the same kind of electricity that you're referring to. And I guess we have that in our bodies too.
Yeah, exactly. And here's where it gets interesting. Like, what defines being alive? You could have a body where someone's alive and something happens and then the body's not alive. And if you were to test that body, the only way that you can truly test that body is for the presence of heat, firstly, right? Heat and movement. Now, movement is kinetic energy and it takes electrical energy to produce kinetic energy. For example, what is sugar? So the sun shines and the plants are alchemists. They receive the sunlight and turn it into a crystal. They literally act as a transponder to transform the energy, the electrical energy within the sun into a crystal. And they do it in the most incredible ways, right? Then those
Right.
crystals, which is like crystallized sunlight, electricity, and there's pure electricity coming out of the sun because electricity produces heat and light. That electrical potential in the sugar is what we need to consume in order to metabolize our bodies. It's all electrical energy. And that
Right.
electrical
Red cell
energy
and everything. Yeah.
gets turned into kinetic and heat energy. So we test for vital signs. It's for body temperature, right? And for kinetic potential is the heart beating or things moving in the body. And when the kinetic potential stops and the heat stops, it's because there's no electricity moving through the body. So it's really interesting when you think about like that we've got this blood plasma and it's moving quite fast around the body, and the red blood platelets are actually affecting the electrical charge. I don't know if you've looked at that, the way they rub against each other. Very interesting. And so the whole system is like a finely tuned like electromagnetic field within the system. And the heart, when it beats, it creates a powerful electromagnetic field that can be sensed. This is how we EEGs, right? They can
Right.
pick it up feet away from the human body. It's quite a powerful electromagnetic field. And that electromagnetic field, I believe, has got to do with our consciousness, right? When that electromagnetic field is no longer here, there's no thought, there's no awareness. When that electromagnetic field is here, there's awareness and consciousness. So this makes us think that the microbes have got tiny little electromagnetic fields. They must have consciousness of their own degree. They probably can't do calculus or physics or understand the depth of connection between humans, but they have their own limited form of awareness to know, like, that's good, I must eat that. That's bad, avoid that, right? I need to make this. Oh, there's plenty of this. I can take that. I can make that. And so they basically drive all the enzymes in the body, and all the enzymes are really, really important for like so many different features. In fact, people don't realize this. Most of the serotonin gets made in our gut, right?
Hmm.
Guess who's responsible for that? Microbes. So, depression is very related to the gut. Very, when you look at the biochemistry behind it, it's incredible that like we are treating the brain, we're not looking at the gut. So the doors of
But
perception, I think,
oftentimes when you're depressed, you're looking for comfort foods. Your body is craving comfort foods. Maybe not
and
always good for you. Yeah.
those are very bad for your microbes. And there's a certain kind of microbe that likes to eat that. And that microbe has a particular kind of a reaction in the gut, producing a particular acidity and alkalinity, which makes the environment not good or good for generating serotonin and other hormones. So it's very interesting when we start to look at the gut, and what they've discovered is there's neurons in the gut as well. There's a lot of neurons in the gut. You know, within some of the organs, there's a lot of neurons. So
Right.
like there's a different kind of an intelligence. And when we say that as a gut feeling, I work for my work, I get a lot of gut feelings, right? And
Mhm.
my gut is really strong. Like if I meet someone, I will feel in my gut whether I like them or not. If I don't like them, I don't like them. I'm like a dog like that. Dogs are like
Right.
that. That's why the
Dogs are
dogs
like
lick you and sniff you. They lick you and sniff you because they they want to taste you and they want to sniff you because their gut can tell if you're a good person or a bad person. They'll either like you or they won't. You know, animals are like
right.
that. They're incredible. So I think like the doors of perception, we've limited our reality to what we think we see and hear, right? And we don't take into account how important smell is and taste and touch, right? As sculpting the state of reality we're in. And where we're constantly obsessed with the brain. So we think that reality is focused on the brain, which the brain is like a very important part of structuring and creating the final product, right? Parietal lobes and everything else happening in the brain. But so much of what we're experiencing, I think, is on a cellular level. And on that cellular level, there's a hyperdimensionality, there's a spiritual dimension to what's happening here. We're just not usually aware of it because we've been sort of brainwashed into a materialistic paradigm where, like, depending on how um if one observes in a strict way the experiment using particular equipment, you'll get a different result for the experiment. And this is one of those things that have completely blown the minds of scientists. And this is where we come up with these ideas of, superposition, and obviously all the research at CERN. So and the other thousands of miniature versions of CERN all around the planet. They're literally thousands of these colliders. And it's just really interesting. We're getting to this point now where we're starting to question the nature of reality. That reality isn't what it seems. It's all just the Higgs field. And out of the Higgs field, there's all these different fields interacting with each other. And these fields then collapse into this physical plane of physical reality. But I think that the physical reality that we're in can literally be changed if we change our consciousness. So, why did that boy get healed when his DNA was changed? Well, could reality be an expression of consciousness? And if reality is an expression of consciousness and the DNA is the instrument through which consciousness is rooting itself into the physical, and then it uses the instruments of hormones and electrical impulses to carry the information, which then expresses itself in organic matter, right? But if this consciousness is the foundations upon which matter is based, then to change the consciousness field is to change matter, and DNA could be the interface. So, what we're learning about DNA is really, really interesting, and I think there's the fascinating thing is that we've got to a point where people are starting to affect DNA and starting to play with DNA, right? Which is dangerous, obviously, like foods, a lot of the
Right.
GMO foods. They've discovered that the Franken foods that have been made sometimes cause reactions. They make animals sick. A lot of people have cancer. Nobody knows why. I reckon 10 or 20 years down the line, we'll have enough data to be able to research and go, well, maybe those
Well, we
GMO
already know that
potatoes were a
processed
bad
food.
idea.
Yeah. I guess what I'm thinking. I mean, one of the things that's coming to mind is like the so many humans nowadays with the stress and the chaos of the world, they're dealing with high levels of anxiety. And sometimes that comes from a sense of not being in control. Well, how can you be in control of your own personal space and reality with what you're describing? Or is that just an illusion too? We don't need to be in control. It's going to happen without us. I don't think I like that concept.
I think they're both true, personally. I think we do have control, but we're not in control. So, like, reality is going to happen, but we're completely in control of how we fit into reality, if that makes sense. So,
Always
um,
looked at as we have control of how we react to reality, but then the question again, like you're presenting, is what is reality and whose reality are we reacting to?
Exactly. And I think that in modern times, we've become very materially focused and trapped in the material reality more so than we used to be. And like, there are a lot of people that will tell you prayer, people have been healed by prayer, right? It's been documented.
Absolutely.
It's happened.
Yeah.
It does happen. Now, what is that? What on earth is going on there? Because that is definitely got nothing to do with physical matter. That's got to do with the DNA changing. So what changed the
Right.
DNA? Well, state of mind. State of mind changed the DNA. How did you change your state of mind? By aligning it with divine principles and praying and aligning your energy and your thought. And that changed because something must have changed for the body to change, right? And
Right.
so now that we've discovered that changing the DNA can change a physical malady, a physical illness. So if you have prayed and become healthy, then the only logical explanation is that somehow your DNA changed.
Okay. And on that, let's take another break and a breath here. We'll see what we'll go to our next segment in a moment. Thank you.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. You know, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Nurse Peggy Smith and the BushWhisperer Shaman. We've been talking about perceptions of reality, and I guess I'm wondering how much control I have, and if I perceive that an outcome that I want is, how much control do I have? And continue where you left. I'm fascinated.
Well, yeah, the whole control story is a bivalent conversation, I think, and I think we have the control to change our perception. We have the control to affect our DNA. We have the control to affect our hormonal states. Um, our lifestyles very much going to affect how much control we have, because thinking is a pattern and a habit, and the power of thinking is incredibly effective to change our state of mind. And it often works against us or for us. Depression really is effectively negative patterns of thought that affect the hormonal system and infect the brain and infect the physiology. In the end, depression leads to illness, because the DNA literally starts to back up.
Yes.
It starts to back
Yeah.
up. So I think like they're all connected, and I think that there are certain fundamental principles that will happen. Like if I drop this on the floor now, it's going to fall on the floor. But that could be an inspiring sound. An apple falling out of the tree gave Newton a eureka moment. Someone else might be frustrated and get irritable by it and carry that frustration through their day. So how we take on board
Well,
these phenomena are
since we're
important.
all interconnected with each other, what do we have personal responsibility and moral responsibility uh, I mean, I don't want to say think the right way, but because what is the right way? Um,
This is really interesting because we like to think of ourselves as all being separate, but we're not. That's the beautiful thing about life, right? Animals appreciate it and understand it. And so when you walk down the road, your body language is going to affect the people you walk past. And if you're carrying
Absolutely.
positive, uplifting smiles and body language, you're going to infect them with smiles and positive infect. If everybody walks around looking at the ground, looking depressed, everyone's going to be a gray day. Everybody's going to be depressed. That spreads. So our personal responsibility is really, um, are we being the best that we can be for our own state of well-being? And if we are, we're probably being the best for other people. And we definitely have a responsibility to that, because otherwise we will suffer. And the more we suffer, the more we will facilitate suffering in others, because these we're not living in a vacuum. And
Right.
I think, like, when it comes to morality is an interesting point. Morality is more of an instinct. It's more of like what we've got inside of ourselves. But that has to do with becoming in tune with empathy. Morality and empathy are very related and connected. And the empathy brings about compassion, and the compassion is the altruistic expression of moral paradigm. And then we've got ethics, and ethics is a more thought based. This is like a set of rules that we follow, like the rules in any religious structure.
Right.
And the ethical structures are also useful, because those are like guidelines. We can plan and go, next time I don't want to do that. So if we're doing something that's a pattern, because we can get into an emotional pattern of doing something bad that's bad for ourselves, and we don't realize that because we're being in the negative way that's bad to ourselves. When we walk out down the road and we meet the lady in the shop, we're going to be rude to her, and we're going to ruin her day. She's going to get home and she's going to be affected by that, and it's going to pass on to her kids who are going to go to school, and they're going to pass it on to their playmates, who's going to pass it on to their sisters and brothers and uncles and grandmothers and parents, and it's this kaleidoscope effect of interconnectivity between us all emotionally is going to carry. So I think, like, we definitely have a responsibility towards each other, and this is why the great teachers of spirituality have always come and said to us, listen, it's very simple, like, do unto others as you want done to yourself, right? And you
Right.
know if you want, become the change you want to see in the world, right? Don't be stuck pointing fingers, judging, because the moment you're judging someone else, you're judging yourself. And this is what we don't realize, right? What we do to others, we do to ourselves, because of this anthropomorphic nature of the human consciousness. What we think of ourselves, we project outwards, and what we do to others, we think of ourselves. So if we are looking down on other people and judging them, then on some level we're going to start to do that to ourselves, because life is a pattern of cycles, and it's hard not to get addicted to the pattern of cycles and to get lost in the rotation of these cycles going round and round and round. So if you want to be healthy, start a healthy pattern. Eat healthy food,
Right.
do healthy things. If there are those of you out there that watch porn, that's an unhealthy pattern. Stop it. Use ethics to decide, no, I'm not going to do that. And then use morality. Like, if you do catch yourself doing something, then think to yourself, shame, these poor people. They're being manipulated with money to, like, degrade themselves. How bad must that feel for the human being? And start feeling empathy for the people. And suddenly you won't be interested in that. You'll think, like, how can you help these people? So, and then when you're starting to think about how you can help other people, then you're automatically going to apply that to, how can I make myself better? See? So it's all a paradigm of perception, and that perception will reroute our thinking neural pathways so that we can use the maximum potential of our brains and our energetic system to align ourselves in such a way that we can be healthy, and that can bring us to a state of well-being.
I think the isolation that most of us experienced during the COVID era contributed to the loss of empathy. It's made it. Uh, we just haven't accessed it because we were, creating our own world inside instead of outside.
you know when we look at it, and this is my view, personal view, I think that the lockdowns did more harm than what the virus did. Just if I look at it, right? The virus
Right.
did a lot of harm, but the lockdowns did harm to everybody, right? The virus did harm to a portion of the population. And now a lot of the evidence that has come out suggests that the arm pricks that everybody was getting wasn't as good as they advertised, wasn't as safe. And
Right.
a lot of people didn't get it and they're still okay, you know? So I think like there was a lot of money and ethics to question with regards to how that whole process was handled. And
Right.
sure, there were people who make a lot of money, like Mr. Gates. I'm sure he made a lot of
Right.
profit. I'm sure there are a lot of others that made a lot of money out of it, though there
Well,
are ethical questions.
your former citizen from your country, yeah, has played
Oh
a role in.
yes. Oh,
Uh,
he's. I don't even want to say his name. It's like talking of the beast, right? Because the real harm that we're doing at the moment is with energy, right? And back to electricity, right?
right.
Because we are changing this reality with AI, and these data centers are out of control. Out of control. People are suffering without electricity because the data centers are taking up all the electricity. I think Ireland. Do you know a massive percentage of the grid is being taken by data centers, and now people are being charged a lot of money for electricity, which increases the cost of life for them, right? So that the data
Right.
centers can get very cheap electricity. And this is a global phenomenon. And these data centers use a lot of electricity and they use a lot of water. And there've been places in the States where, you know, the water has become infected by the data centers and other places around the world. And so I think like when it comes to ethics, we really got to look at like, what are we doing with AI, right? Do we need as much AI as what we're getting? Have we got enough? Do we need more? Does it need to get bigger? Do we need more and more and more data centers? And I think this human greed is at the core of our problems with ethics, right? Because we're living in a
Right.
society of abundance where if you have enough money you can have abundance which causes greed. And like you say, you know, the musketeer is out there, um and like at the behest of the trumpeter, and the musketeer is dancing to the sound of trumpets, you know, and he's always dancing through the gates. He's got a good gait when he's the gates when they dance are pretty good, and these guys are making a fortune, right? They're making so much money. It's just not funny. But what about the rest of us? And I think like these ethical questions about these AI systems, this is something that's going to affect our reality in a way that we can't even begin to imagine, right? Like
We haven't been
job.
teaching AI empathy because the person that's creating and promoting a lot of that, you know, genetically, and I think, you know, his own personal. I'm not a physician for diagnosing, but he obviously is not connected to the concept of empathy. Uh, the friend that used to live in your country, you know, so and that I think was driving a lot of the choices he made in my country, because he is lacking that as a basic DNA. He doesn't have the DNA for empathy, if there is such a DNA, um, or
and
he's
and
chosen to ignore it. So we
they're
still
all
have
playing from.
free will here. Free will has come up in a couple of our shows. With everything, because we don't have a lot of time left, but with everything that you've been presenting, what role do we have with respect to free will?
Well, free will, that's the beautiful one, you know. I believe that we do have free will, even though we might be trapped in a sense. But the free will is how we choose to respond, how we choose to live our lives. And the free will is really the fundamental paradigm of what it means to be human. And I think that when we start giving up our free will is when we're not thinking for ourselves. And so when people are using AI too much, they don't want to think. AI can do it for me. I don't need to do that. AI can do that. And it's laziness. I think free will and laziness is like on a set of scales, right? If you get
Okay.
lazy enough to just want to sit around and watch television and just play computer games and just enjoy yourself and just not have to do anything and have AI do everything for you, people have AI running their businesses for them, making money for them, and they don't even work, right? They're just making money just by having AIs, and then they get bored. And I think that free will has got a lot to do with free thinking. And if you aren't exercising your right to think freely, you start to lose free will. So a lot of people are losing the ability to exercise free will. But those of us that choose to exercise our minds and to think for ourselves and to introduce ourselves to new questions, I think that's the secret. If you desire answers, you move away from free will. If you desire questions, you move towards free will. Because the more questions we entertain, the more we have to think. And the more we have to think for ourselves, the more we're freeing our own mind. And it's really, we are in this great war for our own minds and for the freedom of our minds. And I think like the free will is right at the heart of it. And what there is there's a percentage of humanity that's becoming less free will oriented, and a percentage of humanity is becoming hyper free will oriented. And so this polarity seems to be shifting in the same way that the financial polarity shifts. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer, while those with free will get freer, and those with less free will become more enslaved.
On that break, we'll take another break on that topic, and you can give us some give us a lot. You always give us lots to think about, but your closing message, I'm sure, will be inspiring. We'll be right back.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Welcome back, Shaman. We've been having lots of thoughts, some food for thought, and we just have a few minutes left. How can people reach you, and what is your final message on this? You always leave us enough to think about until the next time you come. It's wonderful.
At BushWhisperer on YouTube, at BushWhisperer in Telegram, or BushWhispererSpeaks@gmail.com. That's where you can find me. Yeah, the positive message, I would say it's like this, really. We're at a point now where we are being forced to adapt to AI. And I think the first step is to minimize AI. Use AI responsibly. Think of AI as a very dangerous thing and use it responsibly. Spend more time outdoors. Spend more time in the sun. Gosh, how many people have vitamin D deficiencies? And how important is vitamin D for your immune system? Also, I think we need to become more aware of each other. We need to actually go outside and talk to people. We need to go outside of our comfort zones. We're always speaking to people online, and we've got these mirror chambers, echo chambers, where we get to speak to the people that have the same ideas as us, and it makes us become more crystallized in our ideas. What we want to do is we want to speak to people who have different ideas and be able to expand our thoughts be challenged. We need to challenge ourselves. I think that's how we develop free will, is by challenging ourselves and learning to be challenged and not to be reacting to being challenged. Because it's when we embrace the possibility and the opportunity for change that we become the change that we want to see in the world. So we're at this point now where we really need to start tuning in to our surroundings. And so that obviously we've spoken about diet and not too much media and not too much what you watch. Fear. Human beings constantly want to be afraid. Why do they want to be afraid? Doesn't make any sense, right? Why do we want to watch stuff that creates stress and fear? We should be watching a ballet, dance. We should be watching beautiful, creative, artistic things. A lot of the media has been designed to make us afraid. There's a lot of conspiracy theory out there that's packaged in a way that's fear mongering. We need to avoid all of that and start putting our attention to the things that matter to ourselves, put our attention in the people around us, and start opening our eyes to the people and start allowing ourselves to let people in. Because when we let people in, then we start to allow the opportunity for ourselves to become the change we want to see in the world by embracing the change. And that change always comes face to face between two human beings.
Absolutely. But like everything else, it's complicated, relationships are complicated, life is complicated. And I guess if we're not looking, or maybe fear gives us a certain level of comfort because we feel like we don't have responsibility or a role in the fear. We expected it. And so we created it for us. But it takes a lot more courage, I think, to try to help alleviate fears and just be true to yourself. And that's one of the biggest fear. You're afraid you won't be liked or you won't be successful. Um, I see some podcasts, people are just trying to imitate the ones that are getting the high numbers, and they're missing, you know, why they're getting those numbers sometimes. Um, but I know my grandson who just graduated from high school, they were teaching him AI, and I was concerned about it. And they were teaching him, though, the responsibility of using AI and what the negative aspects are, and the ethical responsibilities when you're using it. And I was very happy to see that the schools, at least, are addressing that issue because they are our future. These kids.
Yeah, totally. And you mentioned a couple of interesting points as well. I do think that we're at this pivotal point of change, and the pivotal point of change is a spiritual retunement, you could say, of our
Right.
vehicles through which we experience reality. And so it's very important that we're able to to embrace what we feel, and that's so important. The most important thing that you can ever do is be honest. Express your feelings. The beautiful thing is, like, people say to me, "Oh, what if people don't?" I say to people, "Do you know how many people there are in the world? There are, like, what are there, 8 billion people? Some people are never gonna like you. Some people are gonna like you. Some people are gonna be, they don't care. So why would you waste your time to try and get the people who don't care to like you, or the people who don't like you to like you? Rather just be yourself, and those people will go away. And the people that will become attracted to you will be the people that would like you. And then you will become more yourself, because that's what people want to see. And I think, guys, this is the key, you know, being oneself, to be completely wholesome, to be completely authentic, to be completely genuine, and not to have any, um, you know, any agenda of how I want what I want people, what I
Well, I think
desire
it's
from.
hard for people to like you if you don't like yourself. So that is a good starting point. Um, why would you expect someone to like you if you don't like yourself? This has really been great, Franklin. I'm so happy to have you visit us again. Thank you so much for coming. I hope the rest of your winter was well. I guess we're in a heat wave over here, and you're with the penguins watching happy things, and so uh, thank you so much for coming today. It's been a pleasure and very enlightening as always.
As always, it's been an absolute honor, and I've enjoyed it. And thank you Thank you, dear Peggy, and thank you, Zach, for handling all the technical. And thank you, everybody, for spending some time hanging out with us. I hope you guys have an absolutely fantastic day. And the most important thing, don't forget to smile. It costs nothing. It lifts you up, and it lifts everybody up that you smile at. It's one way to change the world, and it just takes a few little muscular contractions. Big love.
Absolutely.
Blessings.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the
This has been The Holistic Nurse with host Peggy Smith. Tune in each week where you're encouraged to send in questions and receive private responses and suggestions if appropriate. Here's Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern.